Hey, everybody, welcome back to Modern Solutions for Modern Restaurants. This is Paul Molinari at Popcorn GTM, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about humanizing hospitality. Oh, humanizing hospitality. What the heck is that? Well, it means that we're going to talk about the realities and some of the human tolls that a life in hospitality may endure. Now, this is not, an episode that bashes the restaurant industry. In fact, quite the contrary. We love restaurants and what they represent and what they mean to the world. We love them so much that today is really our mission is to talk frankly and recognize that there's always room for improvement, right? So, especially inside of the four walls. So, our guest today, I love this woman and what she's doing and what she represents. She's so brave and she's just a kind soul. And I know you're going to love her too. Her name is Colleen Silk. She's the founder and CEO of Hospitality Bites Media. And Colleen's mission is to amplify individual voices and encourage the industry to prioritize mental well-being, create sustainable workplaces, and basically foster a culture of inclusivity and support. And so Colleen and her team at Hospitality Bites, they offer niche consulting services for restaurateurs. They host events. They produce a podcast. And Colleen is actually even currently working towards funding several documentary productions for the hospitality industry. So with that, Colleen Silk, welcome to the program. It's so awesome to finally have you here.
I know. Thank you. It's so fun when people read back what I've worked on because I think anyone that's an entrepreneur or professional, you forget that you've worked really hard to get to the place that you're at and the accomplishments you've had. So that was just really nice to hear that back. Thank you.
Oh, well, hey, that was absolutely my pleasure. So listen, let's get into it a little bit. Okay. Tell me a little bit about your journey from operations, to storytelling, which is what you're doing today, and why you founded Hospitality Bites Media.
Definitely. So I am a lifer. Like a lot of people, they started in their teens. I was hosting and waiting tables at 16, 17, and really just had a hard time in school. My folks recognized that as much as they wanted me to go to college or, local university. I just was not thriving and I didn't thrive in high school, but I really was thriving working in restaurants. It was the ability to engage with strangers. I didn't know I had that. I'm still a very anxious person. I was a very anxious child. I suffered a lot of depression in high school. I didn't have a ton of great friends, but in the service industry, what I found was every table is a new experience. It's a new person. They're there for a different reason. And they ask how you're doing, and you ask how they're doing. And it's really this back and forth conversation. And I just realized I thrived in it. So I stuck with it. And I'm now almost 37. So I've been in it actually 20 years, which is wild to say that. And I worked my way up from our local beach bars and restaurants here. I worked in corporate hotels in DC and corporate restaurants, and then found my way in Chicago and was working for a historic restaurant and now brewery.
Yeah.
They're over 125 years old. And the great thing about an old restaurant and a family that's owned it for over a century is there's a lot of stories that go on in those buildings. And you've got people coming in like, oh, my great grandfather dined here. My grandmother met her partner here.
I love restaurants like this.
Isn't that
Yeah,
incredible? I mean, yeah, you're in Boston, so you guys have a ton of
we
culture.
do.
Yeah, and you don't find that everywhere in the country. So to work in a city like Chicago, which is a food mecca, I really started to learn what hospitality and restaurant industry was. It was different than DC. It's different than living in my current beach town. There's all different cuisines. I never really experienced different nationalities before and getting to enjoy food. And every part of Chicago has its own cool section. So I started to fall in love with the food, the people that come and dine with you, learning about the buildings that a lot of these restaurants are housed in. Like that alone is really interesting. And I started telling stories about the Berghoff and really dove into that and giving the Berghoff family kind of putting life back into a building that was at that point actually 150 years old, and it's older than that now. And next thing I know, I started writing and really dug into the storytelling aspect. And fast forward, I met my husband there, and I've got two kids. So it really is a place that I fell in love with.
It's the center point. It's really
Yeah.
kind of this launching pad for something went off in your head where, you work in restaurants long enough. I feel like there is a creative gene, in everybody. And a restaurant is a place where that can really kind of flourish, isn't it?
100%. I think the people that are lifers all have that bug.
Yeah.
They didn't know that it was deep down inside them until they were given an opportunity to highlight their creativity in whether it's making cocktails or food or hosting. I mean, even being a host is quite a skill set to be able to navigate people's personalities. You it's a
Yeah.
really great industry for you to grow and learn about yourself. And it's not just working in restaurants too, which I think is so awesome. There's so many career paths now once you get into the restaurant world.
So you had this creative spark,
Mhm.
uh, and after a while, it took you a while, of course, to have all of these experiences where you
Mhm.
can put all that together, and you formed Hospitality Bites Media, which is
Mhm.
a little bit of a different. I know you have many projects, and we're going to go into it, but one of the things that Hospitality Bites really does focus on is mental health, inclusivity, burnout. You know, what was the impetus for when did the light bulb go off and say, I need to start talking about these subjects in hospitality?
The pandemic. I think like most people in the restaurant and hospitality space, we all got hit and it was just a tidal wave of
Yeah.
our lives stopped. Like everyone in the world, your lives stopped on March 12th, wherever you were in the world. But for the restaurant industry, our whole way of making money is involving conversations with people in real time. And when
Right.
that was taken away, I had friends that struggled significantly. Um, I lost a few people, they took their lives,
Oh,
and I was pregnant during the pandemic, and I'd lost my income by 75%. So I had a lot of time to think. This was just me and my growing belly. So I started journaling and just started writing down how I was feeling, doing puzzles, and a lot of, like, self-reflection. Fast forward to 2021, I went back to Chicago for the first time. I'd grown an entire baby at that point, and she was 6 months old. So it's
yeah.
18 months had happened. And when I got there, I just felt different. I felt that my purpose was beyond operations and branding and marketing. So I started this idea of hosting a podcast, which I had no idea what I was doing, on a platform that I don't think exists anymore. But the idea was to have real conversations in real time with a live audience.
Hmm.
So I invited two of my friends to join me to start. And I said, I want to talk about the dirty stuff. I want to talk about the things that we have faced that aren't what you see on television, because I don't want people to feel so alone that they don't feel like they belong and they're taking their lives. Because I know I was at a place where I was really feeling, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself? How am I going to take care of my family? How am I going to pay my bills?
Yeah.
So I just started talking about things that made people really uncomfortable. And I had my girlfriend come on and join me, and we talked about her having a baby and how insane it was in the 2000s
Yeah.
when there was really no monitoring of regulations in the restaurant industry, and people liked it. And I thought it was refreshing that people felt so comfortable to be so open about the nitty-gritty things. I was like,
Right.
"Oh, there's something here. I wanna keep doing this. I wanna dive in deeper." So it took several months, I had to take some time off from I had a very serious health scare. But when I came back, I went all in on sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, and also the successes when
Yes.
people hit rock bottom. I thought it was so important to share. I had friends that were on that were addicts, and they shared their dirty addict stories about in the restaurant industry. But they're now thriving and successful in it because they got the help that they needed, and they want to stay in the industry and they want to see it be successful too. So that was wonderful. It was okay to share
Yeah.
the bad and then what's so great about it too.
Well, so there's no shortage of topics, of let's say rather, there's no shortage of the human toll
Mhm.
that restaurants can kind of take out on people, particularly if this is your career, this is more than your passion project. This is this is your life. You work in restaurants. This is what you know. This is what you do.
Mhm.
This is every day. And I have some, it's just doing a little bit of research and preparation for this pod. you know, there's a couple of different things that jumped out at me as, you know, we've heard some of these before, but some of them kind of really struck me. You know, we all know most workers in this industry still lack even basic health coverage. I think the latest stat by uh, I'll put all the links in the description. But about 32% of hospitality employees have health insurance versus roughly 77% of the private sector workers overall. So uninsured staff, you know, which means they're likely to delay care. They're going to go to work sick. They're going to face medical debt. You know, the costs can be overwhelming. So that's one area, the healthcare. The other thing that I thought was really quite insane is that when you look at substance abuse, it's really kind of the highest in any other industry aside from mining workers and construction. Um, I mean, you know, why do you think that is? What's going on here?
I can speak for my own experiences. So when you're working in the industry and you work, 12 hours, so you're working maybe let's say an evening shift, but you come in at midday. You're crashing by 7, 8 o'clock, but you still have 4 hours of dining room service. It's easy to quickly get something, shoot it back, sniff it, whatever it is, because you need to
Yeah.
survive to get through the
Yep.
end of your shift. I hate to say it, but we're rewarded with alcohol at the end of a shift. A lot of places offer shift drinks. So say you're trying to potentially be on the wagon and you want to try to
Yeah.
navigate sobriety, but your reward at the end of your shift is a shift drink. You're uncomfortable maybe saying no. So you just jump in, but that one shift drink can turn in going to the next bar and then you spend all your money that night. I was guilty of that. I didn't know how to say no. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not sober, but I am way more aware of what I can take and what I should be indulging in because I also understand alcohol. I had no idea about alcohol. I didn't
Yeah.
know that it was a depressant. I didn't know
Yeah.
that I was having all this fun, but I was crashing and that hangover is actually my body rejecting everything that I had just consumed. And then I was going back to work 6, 7 hours later.
Just like cycle after cycle.
The
Yeah.
rinse repeat
It's
cycle.
yeah, it's a rinse repeat. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
and this is especially true, obviously, you know, in I would imagine this is especially true, of course, in the independent restaurant world, right? Much more so than you're going to see this more so in that, and, you know, in
Mhm.
places that serve alcohol, particularly,
Mhm.
as opposed to say QSR. Um, you know, so with regard to this, how does somebody that works in this industry for their lifetime and that may be working for an employer that doesn't offer healthcare, how does that work? I mean, what are you doing? Are you getting private insurance, or are you just hoping that nobody gets sick? I mean, what's that like?
So, in obviously the last several years, there's been more regulation on if you have X amount of employees, you have to provide X amount of insurance benefits as the
Yeah,
employer. So, what they companies will do is they keep your hours underneath that full time amount, so to speak, or they only hire you as part time. So, there's no really insurance offered. So, when people are being hired and there's no benefits, they're basically hoping and praying for the best that they don't get sick. And if they do get sick, they're not going to call out because they're afraid of missing their shift because then they could be reprimanded for that, right? So
yeah,
for some reason, our industry is so afraid of saying, "Hey, I got to take care of myself," because I think we're people pleasers that we want to please everyone.
yeah. Well, it's
At the
kind of the culture. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
hospitality, right? I mean, uh, it's an always on culture.
Hmm. So for people that don't have insurance, I really think it's just hoping and praying for the best because when it is catastrophic, it really is. Like you talked about it, the electric bill, excuse me, the medical bills, they pile up.
Yeah,
People don't wanna see that. They don't want that coming through their mailbox, so they'll just avoid it at all costs, but truly does cost them almost everything. Because I have people that will go to work so sick that then they also take down the whole team that they're with,
oh,
right?
right. Yeah.
And "Oh, show up to work if you have a fever, who cares?" Like, chop it up. Well, then you take out your entire team, then what are you gonna do?
Oh God.
But
Yeah.
that's the reality of it.
So here's another interesting stat. Mental health crisis seems to be the norm. This is a recent study by Slow Food. Roughly 4 to 5 hospitality professionals, 80%,
Mhm.
say they've experienced at least one mental health problem during their careers. And that's, I guess, what that's showing us is chronic stress, irregular hours, again, this always on culture. This all leads to burnout and
Mhm.
anxiety and, you know, head trash and all sorts of things. So this always on, the mental health side of this, this really does seem to be almost a perfect storm of really, in some ways, a devastating lifestyle.
Mhm.
So what do you, before I want to get to the project, I think this is actually a good lead way to this
Sure.
project that you're working on now. It's called the Un, in parenthetical, Un-Hospitable project. Tell us about the Un-Hospitable project and why it matters.
Sure. So I decided a few months ago, actually, now we're in June, so now it's been several months. I wanted to make a documentary
Yeah.
before Unhospitable, and I had this whole idea called a project called Beyond the Burnout.
And this is
Which
something you're thinking like could be on a Netflix, like,
Yeah,
certain
exactly.
part episodes, right? Okay.
And then all of a sudden, I had a friend come over and she brought me something. She brought me bread pudding. And the reason why that's significant is that in 2023, I suffered a miscarriage while I was behind the bar.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things that I couldn't stop what was happening. My body was failing me in real time. And there's people, asking for their beers because happy hour is about to end, and it's this really weird, dark rom com moment in my life. But the person I
Mm.
worked for, Liz Smith, she's a chef and the owner, she knew exactly what was happening and sent me home. I was so blessed to be working there, right? So, because she knew what was happening, she was a mother and woman and she could see it. Well, the next day I woke up and there was bread pudding at my door. Her and her husband had dropped it off. So, when she brought that to my house back before Christmas, I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm supposed to be doing is I want to share that story, but
Yeah.
also share all the other stories of my friends and women that truly suffer in silence. Being a woman, we go through changes from the moment you're a preteen until you're on your deathbed. I know it
Sure.
sounds so scary, but your body's constantly changing. And in an industry that's always on, as we said, there's never really time to take care of these basic needs. I remember being a young teenager and sorry, this TMI, but having my period and being embarrassed while I'm at work because I work with mostly men
Yeah.
and you don't want to ask them for anything because it's embarrassing. So you're carrying around things in your apron and you're not going to the bathroom even though you really have to because you're afraid to ask to stop to go. And there's a joke that women carry cranberry pills in the restaurants in the server station because so many women have UTIs while they're bartending, waiting tables, and on the line because we don't go to the bathroom enough. UTIs are just common knowledge. So you always have cranberry pills and cranberry juice readily available. And I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about this and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why is this normal? I don't want my
It's
friend.
crazy I mean,
Yeah.
that's crazy to me. Listen, as a man and as a husband and a father of a 20-year-old daughter, and I'll just I feel like, man, I don't know. I agree with you, but of course you can say something. Of course, there has to be men there that understand these things.
So it's funny that you said that. So I pitched this to my dad. So my dad's almost 70 years old and he has two daughters. And I said, Dad, do you think it's normal that I was afraid to ask to go to the bathroom? He goes, why would you be afraid to ask to the bathroom? I was like, well, I
Right.
was embarrassed. He goes, well, they understand. I go, well, Dad, what if I said to you when I was 17, Dad, can you go buy me tampons? You would have looked at me like a deer in headlights.
Hmm.
Sure. And then I'm automatically uncomfortable and you're my dad. I go, and
Yeah.
it's not your fault because you don't know what it feels like. It's not your fault that you don't know what it's like to be pregnant. You've watched mom have four
Sure.
children. You've seen her body change, but you haven't experienced the actual physical change and how exhausting it can be in real time while you're on your feet working in a restaurant environment. So the more and more I thought about it, I was like, man, there's a lot of men that are in senior positions. So how are we expecting these senior positions to offer resources when they have no idea what it actually is like to go through it?
I get that. See, I do think that there's definitely a part of the male population that don't understand, that don't get it. Maybe they're not husbands or fathers, or maybe they just don't have, women in their lives to the
Mhm.
extent where they know, what those experiences mean or how to deal with it.
And that's not their fault.
Yeah, it's not their fault, but at the same time, okay, so it's not their fault. But this is one of those areas that I think we need to try to figure out to highlight to make that kind of awareness, right?
Mhm.
This is what we're
Right.
talking about. So the awareness.
Exactly. So what Un-Hospitable turned into was I had to share my story first.
Yeah.
And I started doing that. And it was interesting. Speaking of men, I shared it while I was at the NAFM conference with pretty interesting group of men. Some were chefs, some were manufacturers. And all of the response was, I really wish someone would have shared their story before, because now I had no idea what that could have been like for maybe a staff member. I had no, my wife experienced that. I can't imagine had she gone through that in a restaurant. I had one chef say, he's like, I don't even think we, have women sanitary napkins or anything available for them in our PPE kits. And I go, well, why would you think to it? Because you don't need it. I go, this is that. And it was
Yeah.
kind of this like aha moment of if I share this, not just my story, but other women's stories of all different types of physical changes we go through and how shameful it can feel. And
Yeah.
not just talk about it, feel like we're bashing the industry or bashing men, but provide real resources through my work at the Burnt Chef Project where, hey, if you have a staff member that's pregnant, do you have a leave of absence offering for her? Do you have a return of work for her? Do you have abbreviated working schedule for her? How can we help facilitate these conversations so it is a more inclusive space and people don't feel uncomfortable hosting the conversation and people both men and women can communicate with each other and not have this like invisible weird tension between them because it shouldn't be. It's just everyday things, and we can do a better job in our industry.
Absolutely. So the Unhospitable Project, a
Mhm.
documentary series. What are some of the stories or
Mhm.
so do you envision this as being episodic where, there's three or four or five, is it a limited series? Is it ongoing series? I mean, there doesn't seem to be any end to
Right.
really interesting, fascinating, heartbreaking, beautiful stories that are inside the four walls, right?
So we're going to limit it to 8 to 10 women. I have about six that have signed on, and everyone's story is very different, although we all come from the restaurant industry or hospitality. So that's our common thread, right? I have women sharing stories of having endometriosis and how painful that is for them. One woman, she was a bartender and they would cut her shifts because she couldn't stand as long as they needed her to. Well, then she started losing her income. And she's like, I would try to explain to them that I have no control over this. But again, 10 years ago, people didn't even really talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So for her in her 20s, they were like, suck it up. And then she would be in pain, hospitalized. I have one woman joining me who's talking, we're going to talk about breastfeeding in the restaurant industry and
Hmm.
pumping and having to pump under the stairs or in the storage room because there's
I mean,
nowhere
listen, and we've all been to the back office. I mean, where the hell is there's nowhere to hide in a restaurant. I mean,
nowhere.
you can, what are you going for in the walk-in?
I I have a friend who had to go in the walk-in because it was cool and it was summer and we worked outside and it was
Yeah.
literally the only place that she could cool down because pumping, for those that are listening, if you ever have not experienced it, it's exhausting. It's so
Yeah.
physically demanding and there's all these pieces and parts and you got to make sure it's refrigerated. It's just
It's I
it's
remember my wife,
wild.
this is, it's, you know, and then they in a normal office environment, they may have a designated room specifically for,
Right.
women, or there it could be also a multi-purpose prayer room, in some cases. All of these, different accoutrement that comes with,
Right.
the corporate life.
Exactly. Restaurants, people that work, whether it's QSR or full corporate, you still only have limited square footage because everything is accounted for.
That's
There's
right.
straws stuffed in every corner. Everything has a place and a purpose. So that's one of the resources I want to offer through this. So all of the funding that comes this way will also help me put together a plan for people. Okay, so if you have this, what do you need when they return to work?
Yeah.
Or if someone's going through this, do you have water breaks, or do you have breaks in general scheduled for your team? Are you able to make breaks? Can you staff accordingly? And really give some context as to why these resources are needed. So it's not just women talking about women's issues and how they feel and how hard it was for them, but also providing the next generation and those still working in it potentially a safer, more inviting space to be in.
I love it. I'm looking forward to this project. I did see recently that you posted a clip on the progress of it. It looks like it's really coming along. You have a I mean, a full on real world production crew. I mean,
Mhm.
this is going to be a well produced,
Thank you.
nice, high production value. And again, something that is, delivered with love.
Mhm.
Because what absolutely comes through, I think, in all of your messaging and what you do is that this is an industry you love.
I
And
do.
it's not about like, blah, 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 complain,
Mhm.
complain, which is something that our culture, I feel, at least I'll speak for myself. I feel like, you're kind of constantly getting bombarded with the negative and this and
Mhm.
that. It's like, no,
Right.
there's always room for improvement. And so to deliver that message so delicately the way that you do, where it comes from a place of love, and it's really important. I think it's going to be exceptionally well received.
Thank you.
So congratulations on that. One of the things that I think about sometimes is this perfectionist myth, where our industry sometimes tries to project the restaurant as being this place where, you know, everything wonderful it's all perfect. Like, you come here, you're going to get the best experience, you're going to get the
Mhm.
best meal, you're going to get the best service.
Mhm.
You're I mean, we all want to deliver value and a wonderful experience, but it also that contributes to this to some of the problems and some of the biggest issues, doesn't it?
Yes. The perfectionist problem, I think, truly did start with review websites
Ah,
and feeling cut at the knees if a customer came at you, where
yeah,
you may not have known that there was an issue to begin with because they didn't speak up. I had a friend that was working for me as a contractor at the restaurant I was running, and she was doing our social media, and she reached out to me. She was having this horrible dining experience, and she'd posted on Instagram, and she's like, "What would you have done?" I go, "I would have preferred you went and talked to the manager, just said, 'Hey, can I speak with someone because you're having a horrible time?' Instead of blasting them, because what you don't understand is the world of viralness. It's
yeah,
called that for a reason. It takes hold of businesses and can literally bring them down. One bad thing that may not necessarily be true. Because when
yeah,
everyone's pissed off in a restaurant, if you have a customer that's pissed off, 9 times out of 10, I can talk them off their ledge because they just
yes,
want to be heard. There's a reason why they say the restaurant customer is always right. Even if you don't think they are right in their mind, no matter what you say. So, how do you address that? How do you defuse situations instead of getting them ramped up?
right. It does feel like more or less a lesson in de-escalation than
Hmm.
anything else. You know, I do that myth of the perfect review too, or the four. What our industry likes to throw around 4.5 stars. 5 stars is like, whoa, something's weird. 4.5 is that sweet spot.
Yep.
Uh, you know, um, listen, like you said, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be pissed off about
Hmm.
something, and you're never going to know every single one. And someone can, but there's also this feeling that, this one person that's pissed off is going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their friends. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm not convinced of it. I think some of that, frankly, is absolute bullshit. I think that a lot of people may have a bad experience, and to the point where they've gone and sent out a bad review, but I'm not sure that is going to either stop them from going back again or going out and telling their friends about it. It's just, I don't,
It's funny you said that because I would tell my staff, one bad review is one bad review, and they're not going to come back because they took the time to go sit on their computer
yeah,
and write something. And no matter what, I could offer them a free meal, I could invite them back. You always invite the customer back. That's what I think people also forget is no matter
Right.
that people started writing bad reviews, they wanted to get invited back to the restaurant for a free meal. That was like the other part of the sensationalization. Excuse me. That was part of why people would write reviews.
Yeah.
They wanted to be recognized and then get something in return. The perfectionist part of it problem was that if you didn't have those stars, like you said,
Yeah.
and started ranking lower with Instagram and social media, people started hyper focusing on that.
Yes. Yeah.
And it became like an obsession. And there's
Right.
reasons
Now, don't
why.
get me wrong. If you're getting bad reviews all the time and it seems to be the same thing over and
You know,
over again, well, then shame on you for not reading your reviews, responding to them, and trying to figure out what the problem is. That's
it's yes, and especially nowadays, there's programs that help you flag
yeah. Yes.
reviews. And if there's trending comments,
But this idea that, every review is a personal affront or is, has the ability to take down your business, um, that's just not true. And like you said, there's always some kind of remediation, and
mhm,
all restaurants should take the time to read their reviews. And if they do encounter a problem, you should try to have a dialogue and understand what the issue is. But you should all So yeah, that's a thing, right? And it has a lot to do with digital marketing as
mhm,
well, where the search results and you see the stars and where so it can be overwhelming. But this myth of perfection, like always going for that 4.5, five
mhm.
star experience is important. And it's a goal that everybody should strive for in the hospitality industry. But I feel like maybe some overzealous I don't it becomes an obsession, to your
It's
point.
100% an obsession.
Yeah, so that obsession is not healthy.
No, and it's so sad because I believe if you go back before, digital age, people opened restaurants because they loved sharing their talents with people. They love sharing their
Yeah,
food or their family recipes or giving experiences. That's why it's called hospitality. We call it
that's
that
right.
for a reason because we want to give people experiences and we like receiving them. I say that all the time. I love learning about people. I love hearing why they're dining with us. It may not be a great reason. They might have be joining us, from a funeral, but they chose to experience the rest of that day with us. What happens is that this perfectionist obsession of getting potentially recognized in a magazine or
Mhm.
which is not that's kind of relevant now, but digitally and get these awards and there's all these recognitional and these titles, it takes away from that hospitality purpose of
Yes,
why we most of us join the industry. It's sad. It really is sad.
it is. It is. And I think though that um what was that stat we threw out before, or rather I'm not sure, but 10 I think our industry accounts for almost 10% of the workforce, which is just an absolutely an incredible statistic.
Mhm.
Thinking about how many people 25 some odd 30 million people in the restaurant industry. All right, let's talk about. I want to talk about your Burnt Chef project, what that is.
Sure.
Then we'll follow it up with what's coming next, and then I
Sure.
have a little bit of lightning round for you.
Awesome.
All right. So tell me a little bit about Burnt Chef, the Burnt Chef project.
Yes. So I found them. I had two guests on my show. One was from the UK and one was from Canada. And they both are ambassadors for this program, the Burn Chef Project. And I looked into it. And what I loved about it, this was in 2023, early 2022, late 2022, early 2023, excuse me. They were talking about mental health and physical health in the industry. And not only are they talking about it, but they're providing resources. They have training modules. You can become an ambassador and help bring the knowledge you get from their programs into other restaurant groups and universities and things like that. I wanted in. I was like, I love that there is a group of people that think like I do so that the next generation and those that are in it right now can do better and we can be better. So I
Sure.
joined, went through the whole program, became an ambassador, and it truly has saved my life this past year. I suffered greatly from postpartum depression when my son was born. A lot of things happened that compounded. And the one thing that kept me going, I had lost my job. I was feeling terrible at myself after having my son, that I had this group of people that were encouraging me, and I just kept sharing my story in hopes
Mm.
of helping someone else, because it was the only thing that was fueling me along in this journey of Hospitality Bites.
Yeah.
Fast forward to last week, 2 weeks ago, I won the 2025 Influencer of the Year award as an ambassador for the Burnt Chef Project. Yeah, and I had no
Nice.
idea I was gonna get it, but I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. I was just doing what I wanna do, which is sharing stories and talking about the tough stuff, because I just wanna help the next person. It's about
Yeah,
opening the door and leaving it open, right? That's what they say, and that's what the Burnt
absolutely.
Chef
Yeah.
Project is. It's wonderful. It's a global organization. We have ambassadors on every continent, including Antarctica.
That is fantastic. That is awesome. I want to check that out. That is, and when we close up, maybe we can also wrap with how people can get involved with that as well.
Awesome.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's next. So you're still funding
Mhm. Yeah.
your film projects. So what's going on with your funding situation, and the other upcoming projects that might
Mhm.
be going on with Hospitality Bites?
Well, Hospitality Bites has just been rehomed with the crew at Walk and Talk Media. I just recorded the first 2 episodes back this past week, and Walk and Talk Media, Carl Fiadini, he is based out of Florida, and they have some fellows in New Orleans too. I met them at NAFEM, and they host a food podcast, but they're also doing short documentaries. And what's great about their platform is they're doing video content, bringing chefs into the space and filming them making a meal. They're discussing it, and then they have guests on. Where Hospitality Bites fits in is I'm just now another little addition to their family under their umbrellas. Hospitality Bites is back for the next 6 months, 22 episodes slated to be
Fantastic.
there. So check out Walk and Talk Media with Hospitality Bites. And then for funding for all of my documentaries, I obviously Un-Hospitable is our 2025 project into 2026. And then I have a new project coming up at the end of 2026, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to work with a fellow ambassador out of Canada, Imran. And
Mhm.
really, it's just continuing sharing stories about the industry with unique voices and different perspectives to, again, humanize the industry. So all funding that I raise goes towards the production of my documentaries, film crews, travel, accommodations, and then also film festival
Great. And people
fees.
can contribute to this through hospitalitybites.com
Yep,
or
and
okay.
hospitalitybites.com is direct funding, sponsorship. If you wanna be a substantial sponsor, that would be executive producer credits.
Yep.
That would be a much deeper, further conversation, screenings, having your name listed, inviting you onto the panels that we're gonna host with the documentary.
Interesting.
It's more than just putting on the screen, it's about having the conversation and bringing it into, like, the 3D world of
Yeah.
really making a full immersive experience.
This feels to me like something that, I'm just gonna throw it out there, but, Prosper, the Prosper Forum. Familiar with this
No.
outfit? Yeah. I'll send you a link afterward, but they're more, I think, diversity focused,
Okay.
but at the same time, my guess is that I think that there are some, parallels there, and some synergies. Uh, you know, all right, let's go to the fun stuff, man. Let's do a lightning round. And
Okay.
this has been a great conversation. We're coming up on time, so let's knock these things out. What's the most underrated part of hospitality work?
The camaraderie of the people that you work with.
All right. All right. Okay. Restaurant. I've this is my so I'm working with a client right now called Shifty. I'll plug them because they're fantastic. They have this really cool novel approach to restaurant training and engagement. There's a real human element to what they do, and we're actually in the middle of kind of ghostwriting the founders with her story, and we're going to publish a
Fun.
book, which is really kind of cool. But one of the titles that we're messing around with is "Restaurant is a Team Sport." I mean, restaurant is a team sport.
Yes.
I mean, it really is. I
Mhm.
mean, one of the things that I liken it to is sometimes is it's almost like an ER. Like
Everybody.
you go. Yeah, like in a hot, like you have, the attending physician who's the
Mhm.
chef, right? And you have the residents physicians, and they're like the sous chefs, and you have this, everybody has a role. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do, and things are
Mhm.
just kind of moving and shaping, and it's organic. I love that. I love that idea.
It is. I mean, I met my husband there. My best friends, like the people my kids call their aunts and uncles, are people I met in the industry working together. We're all very different. We all come from very different walks of life. But
Yeah.
when you work in an environment, like you said, like in an ER environment,
Yeah.
you need that other person. You are trusting these other people to help facilitate a
Right.
job to make your ends meet. And without
Right.
one person, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
Everybody matters.
A moment that changed how you lead.
Mm. There's one defining moment that made me want to be a better leader. And I worked for this person. And what they did was they played favorites. And it was very apparent that one person would get privileged everything. They could drink behind the bar, they got to take breaks, they were smoking every 10 minutes. This is back in that time period, okay? But if you ask to take a break, oh, you've got a full section. You got a full section, you can't take a break. And I remember thinking, so you're not a leader. You're a person that's kissing ass
Yeah.
because you want to be friends with them outside of work. You're not, that's not what leading is. And your favoritism and the way you're behaving could cost us everything because you're acting like a child.
Right.
It's like, the sandbox type environment.
Yeah.
Only, "Oh, yeah, we can play over here, but you guys can't play with us." That was what it was like, and I was like, "I never wanna be like that." I work with my team. As a manager, I always did the dirty stuff too. I washed dishes,
Click
took the trash out.
leadership is terrible.
Yes, and you can tell when you go into an environment
It
where
is.
they have sucky leaders.
Absolutely. What's the one thing you wish the industry would embrace right now?
That we all make freaking mistakes.
Oh,
Seriously,
we're all perfect. Come on.
it's just, it's okay to make a mistake, and maybe because 'cause I'm a parent now, I make a mistake every day, and my kid clocks me on it without fail, and it really does humble you, like, "Man, I do F up a lot, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person." And when you go to a restaurant and you see people making mistakes, you're like, "Okay, they're just a human." Like, take that pressure off of you because we are not saving lives, we're just doing our best, and it's
Right.
okay if you don't have a great day.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, listen, that's a fact. Colleen, this has been awesome. Where can people find you? How do they get in touch with you? How can they contribute to the projects that you're
Absolutely.
working on?
Best way is go to hospitalitybites.com. You can see my sponsorship needs for my upcoming projects, including the podcast, 2 documentaries, and an upcoming event. Or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active in writing there, Colleen Silk, or just on Instagram at CA Silk or Hospitality Bites Media. I'm always
Beautiful.
around. Shoot me an email.
Fantastic. Colleen Silk, one of the nicest people.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I hope we can do this again.
Uh, Honestly, I've been looking forward to this all week. So thank you so much.
Oh my God. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Another episode of Modern Solutions for Modern Restaurants, the Restaurant Technology Podcast for restaurant technology professionals. And today we got a little real.
It was great.